Good morning. All right, so we're going to be finishing this coyote today, and this is the finished piece that I've done already. And what I've done differently with this one is I've used these Stabilo woody 3-in-1 pencils that I'd mentioned last time. And they're a little easier to get inside some of the finer areas, tighter areas to color. But what we did do with this piece, which we're still working on, is we're using oil pastels, which is fine. But you'll notice a slight difference, not much. This one actually is larger than the one that we're working on, but I just wanted to show you the outcome of this particular drawing and how it looks done. So a little problem area here that I had was with the eye, because it's so hard to get inside the eye because of the smaller space, and I want it to be more defined. So a lot of art is problem solving and making it work, and that can be very exhilarating, very exciting, lots of fun to see what you can come up with. So for this, we're going to define the eye a little bit more. So what I did was I erased because it just looked really dull. And I'm gonna have to go back in. I'm gonna use my razor Sharpie, and I'm just gonna kind of redefine the basic shape of the eye. I'm going to bring that up just a tiny bit. And it might be a little bit challenging because it still might be a little bit oily from the pastel. So it works, but you just need to be a little patient. And then, so I'm going to bring this back in. And you might have to kind of roll your marker a little bit and then try it. There you go. So now it's starting to show up, which is great. So the eyes, I think, are really important in this piece as well. You really want the eyes to stand out. So once I've defined the eye, I'm gonna have to get clever. Now what I could do is use tempera paint or acrylic paint with a very fine brush to get in there, or you can use, if you have a paint marker, you can get in there because it's a little tighter. Now this is pretty bright, so let's see, I'm just going to bring in the color. Okay, and I'm gonna let that dry, but you can see the difference already between the eye that I had prior to adding the paint in and now having it finished. And that's how I want it. So after that's done, and really if you need to work on the eye a little bit more, do that. Work on it a little bit more, bring out the details, and be patient, because it's not something that miraculously works. It's just trial and error. Okay, so now I'm going to get back into my colors, and I'm going to be using a bright pink. Let's see, this is a nice bright pinky red. Now, have a paper towel on hand. We're still using oil pastels to finish this up. And let me see if this was the color I had worked with. Yes, all right, so I've already used this color. So go back and then get yourself kind of a lighter pink. And we're going to kind of emphasize some of the areas on the face. So if you need to peel off some of the paper, you can do that. it helps because then you can use the edge of your pastel to get into some of those harder to color in spaces. And I'm going to use like the side edge, and be careful, you don't want to smudge what you have already. So you need to kind of make sure that your hand is not, your other hand is not on your pastels, and that you're very aware of where your hand is at all times while you're working, and whether or not, let's see, use the edge. So I'm kind of filling in some of the areas that I can still see a tiny bit of the blue background. And that's my goal right now, is to kind of clean it up with these colors, fill it in so that I can finish it. And you can go on top of another color. You just need to see how it's gonna come through. And as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm using my pastel to fill in some of these spaces. Okay, and I'm really loving how that's coming along. I see a little space up here. So you can see the color is just kind of randomly filling in. You don't want to lose anything in the meantime. So I'm going to continue kind of going over, and I'm pressing rather hard with my pastel so that the color will pop. So I'm going to put my pink to the side right now, and I'm going to use this deep purple. As you can see, it's like a bluish purple. Again, I may have to peel off some of the paper on the pastel, and that's okay. And if the pastel breaks, they do that. It's not a problem. All right, so now I'm going to work in some of these spaces that I've left empty along the back hind end of my coyote. I'm going to take this and go down. So I've already worked on some of that prior to this. I'm just gonna kind of go back in and add a little bit more. And I also want to bring this ridge in under the eye on the other side. So I'm just using the edge right under the corner of the eye on the other side. Okay, so I'm going to put this down, and I'm going to use this light blue. You know, the thing about doing art is it's messy, but that's okay. You can clean up after you're done. So I'm going to go back on this side. So I'm going to kind of turn him around. I'm going to actually turn him upside down so that I can get into this back part of my coyote. And I'm going along the back leg up along the hind end. And it's okay to kind of move him around. Kind of lift your wrist up so it's not dragging on any of your coyote. Now you can add some white over it if you wanted it to appear brighter. It's burnishing the color. And what happens if you do add white to any of your color, it makes it illuminate. It's just beautiful. It really pops. So you can see, I'm just adding a little to some of this white, not much. Okay. And I'm working right up against the other colors. I'm not going over. Some of the areas I am going over just a little bit, but I'm really just working up against the other color. I'm going to put that to the side, and let's see. I'm going to go in with a bright light green, and that's already been peeled. So if it gets dirty, simply you can wipe it off with your finger, you know, or use a tissue and wipe that off. So this color almost looks white when it's put onto this background. You can still see it's very subtle. I'm gonna kind of bring in this a little bit more. And I'm adding it to some of the whiter areas so it'll pop a little bit more. And you can see it's already working. You see that just a little bit, and it really makes a difference. So when you're doing your art, there's a lot of experimental parts to it that it's trial and error. I mean, you might want to do this more than once. You may want to do a few different coyotes and different color schemes. It doesn't have to be the same as the one that you're working on. And very nice. I like this. Okay, I'm going to go in with a dark, very deep olive green. I remember in the Fauves, the wild beasts, how brilliant the colors are. That's the idea with your coyote. And I am doing a little bit of a different color scheme on this one than I did the other one that I had showed you that I had finished previously. And that's okay. Like I said, each piece that you do may turn out slightly different than the last one. I'm gonna bring in my white. It's not very big, but it's my little workhorse here. And the goal is to fill up any spaces that have the background showing through. So you want to kind of review your piece and really, you know, step back, take a look at it, see what else you want to add to it. And then I'm going to go in with this. Well, again, you don't want to have too close to the same color. This might not even show up, so I'm going to see. And it does. So you have to test it first. And if it doesn't work, change your plan. Okay, very nice. I like that. See if there's any other area you want to bring in some more color. And then kind of work it a little bit more. If one of the yellows you were working with isn't showing up, try a brighter one. And then with the edge, I want to kind of carefully, now you could do this with a paint pen, or you could do it with just a brush, and you can kind of outline parts of your coyote in a darker color. I want to touch up the nose a little bit. And I don't want it to get too long here. Okay. Okay. All right. So look at it, see if there's any more that you want to kind of bring up with the color. And then for the last part, what I did, make sure your hands are clean. You don't want to get any smudging in the background. Is what I did was I just drew a red line, kind of breaking up the space in the background. Now it doesn't have to be red, it could be any color. And you want to be careful, you don't want to smudge what you've got. And you could do a line lower, you could do it higher. And then you could maybe go in and darken your color if you wanted to. So you could use a paint pen, make sure it's even and not bumpy. You could use a colored pencil. You could use a paint marker. So kind of make sure that it's nice and straight. And then if you wanted to use a paint marker, it would be brighter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this bright pink. It doesn't have to be the same color that I'm using. It can be any color you want, but you want to make sure that you've got your marker even, and then hold it tight with one hand and then drag. Now it could be a paintbrush with a little bit of tempera paint. And we may have to kind of redo that. And take it right to the edge. Okay. There, so it's very subtle than the darker one that I've got. And you can go over it more than once. It doesn't have to be just one time. You can go over it until you get the brightness that you are looking for. And then what you could do is go a slightly different coloration above or below. So if you wanted this slightly darker and have the coyote pop up, then what you can do is we can get our watercolors and use a slightly different color on top of the blue that you've got. So you might not want to do that. You may want to just leave. You may just want to leave what you have already. But I'm all for experimentation, and I'm all for trying something and seeing how it looks. So you'll require, excuse me, a medium round brush. Okay, this one is a medium filbert, and you see how it's got a slightly different shape, and it's a flatter brush. Make sure that it's clean. And I think I'm just gonna play with this and try and see how I like a slightly darker color on top of what I have already. And I think that'll work. So I've done the deepest purple in my color palette, and you might want to do more than one coat just to kind of, oops, almost dipped it in my coffee. That's happened. numerous times. And just keep this color below or above, depending on what you've decided, that line that breaks up the space on our painting and art. So you can see now it's coming up much darker, so I really like that. Nothing is set in stone when you're doing your artwork. And you want to make sure that it's nice and even. Just a tiny bit of water on your brush. Bring that right up to that line. There's a scraggly hair, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim that off. There. A rogue hair can be a little menacing. All right, so basically you can kind of outline your coyote with your paint. I'm not using a lot on my brush of water, mostly paint. And don't forget to get in between the legs. And as you can see, as it's drying, we have a very subtle transition, dark to light. And then just get a little bit on the back part. You might want to switch to a skinnier brush. I think this will still work though. But always have some different size brushes on hand so that you can switch off if it feels more comfortable. Okay, and then let it dry. And then you've got a really beautiful coyote project. Now, before I sign off, I just wanted to show you, let me just put this aside to let it dry. This book I found. Oops, sorry. Oh my gosh. All right. So, happens. Anyway, okay, so let me show you the book. Make sure my hands are clean. I don't want to get anything on it. Sorry about that. Okay, I think it's still. All right. And this book is by Patricia Geis, and it's Henri Matisse. And it's a beautifully illustrated book. I will read parts of it to you next time I see you. Talks about the wild beasts again. And it's just lovely. It's got all kinds of inserts that you can look at, and explanations, and pop-up, so you can see this beautiful pop-up of the dance, and different interiors. And this is quite lovely, where you can open the window, room with views. It's just stunning. It's just an incredible book, and I'm happy to add this to my collection. And check it out if you have the opportunity. It's really quite beautiful. Okay, so that's it for now. Thank you. Sorry for the little bump with the camera falling. Okay, take care, and I'll see you next week.